Periodically, the issue of whether or not to post, to hang, display, whatever, the Ten Commandments comes to the forefront in our country's ongoing discussion on morality and religion. One of the most recent postings comes from the Parent Dish website. Posted this morning, the article reads, "The Giles County School Board in Virginia recently voted to display the Ten Commandments at area schools. Many parents complained and the displays were removed. Then some schools put them back." The article continues, "This has the potential to become a battle of biblical proportions. Over at local news website roanoke.com, one commenter writes, freedom of religion means freedom from religion. If those parents, students, and residents need to be reminded of what the Ten Commandments are, they ought to carry a wallet card." I did like that one. And from the opposite side of the church aisle, another quote, "I am totally behind the school board in placing these commandments back where my son can be reminded daily of the true values that are so important in these times that we now live in. If people don't want to see them, don't read them." So the article concludes, what do you think? Is it wrong to display the Ten Commandments, a religious document, at a public school? Or is this much ado about nothing? Sorry, Shakespeare. Well, for many, the Ten Commandments have become the iconic beacon which can guide us through the treacherous waters of human conduct and should be a visible icon in our midst. For others, they are part of a greater body of sacred writings which guide and inspire us to live our lives with moral and ethical integrity. More recently, in association with the tragedy of the January 8th mass shooting in the Tucson Safeway parking lot, where the now indicted Jared Lee Loughner stands accused of the attempted assassination of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords and the senseless death of 6 others and the wounding of 13. As members of the law enforcement agencies began to unravel these events, and as the news media began the process of investigating and then reporting on the story, the matter of the Ten Commandments began to creep back into our collective discussions. There have been bloggers and tweeters who have stepped forward to advocate that the removal of these 2 tablets have undermined the very fabric of our country's moral integrity and thereby led to this tragic event. Others, like the members of the Westboro Baptist Church, have stated that all of the evils we experience in our world today, especially in America, stem from our failure to abide by the Ten Commandments. In contrast, others respond by challenging this group and asking, where in the Ten Commandments does God say, using the words of the Westboro Baptist Church's own publication, that the baby-killing proud sinners are the root of evil and deserve death? Well, the Ten Commandments have become either a beacon or a lightning rod, depending on your personal beliefs. But there is more to these 10 statements than this. As many of you already know, the Ten Commandments are enumerated in 2 places in the Torah. The first is in this week's Torah portion, Yitro. It is this listing of the Ten Commandments which we read on the festival, which celebrates the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, the festival of Shavuot. As an aside, it is also this week's listing of the Ten Commandments we refer to whenever we quote from the Big Ten. The second instance may be found in the second weekly portion from the book of Deuteronomy. They follow the familiar words of the Shema Ve'ahavta, which we read and chanted earlier in tonight's service, and are an expanded version of this week's list. But for tonight, I would like to focus on this week's portion and share with you a few of my thoughts. The first is that the Ten Commandments, or as we say in Hebrew, Aseret HaDibrot, were written in the first person. They speak to us individually. They say, you shall, or you shall not, to remind us that each of us has a moral responsibility to observe them. By giving them to us in this form, we are prevented from saying to ourselves, let someone else fulfill them. They're meant for them. Another perspective may be found in the 4th commandment. It is in this commandment that we become obligated to remember the Sabbath. We are commanded to zachor, remember. We remember by reminding ourselves that Shabbat is the culmination of the week, but not the culmination of the wonders of creation. We share in the delight of Shabbat as we celebrate together. We remember by being here tonight, by showing up. We actually do more than just recall Shabbat. To recall, well, that just takes a moment of reflection without having to do anything. We recall when we remind ourselves by doing Shabbat kinds of stuff. We gather as a Kehillah Kadoshah, a sacred congregational family. We light the Shabbat candles, and we remember those loved ones who are no longer with us in life. That's how we remember. But there is also a great power in observing Shabbat. Our rabbinic tradition, in our rabbinic tradition, we are told, whoever is careful with the observance of Shabbat will be forgiven for all his sins, even idolatry. And in the words of the Yerushalmi, if the children of Israel would observe one Shabbat properly, the Mashiach, the Messiah, would immediately come. Well, I guess that puts a lot of pressure on us. Well, unfortunately, the rabbi quoted in the Yerushalmi doesn't go on to inform us exactly what it is we should be doing in order to properly observe Shabbat. That's where our lifelong commitment to study comes into play. Each time we embark upon a wondrous journey to explore our tradition, we slowly begin to compile a list of ways to make Shabbat more than just special, but to make Shabbat holy, kadosh. We must go beyond the basic statements of the Ten Commandments and develop our own expanded list of do's and don'ts. So, as the events in the world unfold around us each day, I would remind us to keep the Ten Commandments, these 10 statements, into perspective. They speak to us individually and remind us that we must fulfill them ourselves. We cannot hire someone to stand in for us. It is incumbent upon each of us to fulfill them, and no exceptions. But how do we fulfill them? We do so when we do such things as Zachor l'Shabbat. We remember the Shabbat to keep it holy. Then, like Shabbat, we make ourselves kadosh, holy. That is truly the power of Shabbat, and for me, that is the purpose of the Ten Commandments. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.